At Thanksgiving, my brother tried to force himself on my wife. My parents backed him up and said I was unstable when I stopped him. Months later, he was behind bars, they were bankrupt from lawsuits, and I owned the house they swore I'd never inherit. Hey, Reddit. I guess the best place to start is by saying I don't really talk to my family anymore. It's not because of one single fight or some dramatic fallout. It's a lifetime of small things that turned into big things, and eventually made me realize I was better off keeping my distance. Here's how it went. My name's Daniel. I'm 34, and I've spent most of my adult life trying to undo the damage that growing up in my family caused. My parents, Harold and Patricia, raised me and my younger brother Ryan in a house that felt more like a competition than a home. My dad was the kind of man who believed tough love meant never showing any. My mom wasn't much better. They constantly compared me and Ryan. Grades, sports, friends, anything you can think of. When I got a B plus and he got a C, they didn't congratulate me. They just asked why I wasn't teaching him how to do better. Ryan was always the future of the family, even when he was failing classes and getting into trouble. I was the reliable one, the one they didn't worry about. It sounds like a compliment, but it isn't. It just meant I was invisible. By the time I turned 18, I was so desperate to get out that I left for college across the country and never looked back. We had little contact after that. They'd call sometimes, usually when Ryan needed money or when they wanted to remind me that family comes first. The last time I visited before cutting contact for good was nearly 6 years ago, and it was a disaster. Ryan got drunk and made a disgusting comment about my then girlfriend, now my wife, Emily. That was the night I realized he wasn't just jealous of my life, he was fixated on her. At first, I thought I was overreacting, but over the years, his behavior made it clear I wasn't. He sent her inappropriate messages on social media, called her late at night to talk, and once even showed up uninvited to her work. He told reception he was surprising me, so they'd let him loiter near her desk. It wasn't playful or harmless. It was creepy. Emily blocked him on everything. I told him if he ever contacted her again, I'd involve the police. He backed off, but I always had a feeling it wasn't over. Life without them was peaceful. Emily and I built a life we were proud of. Good jobs, a small but cozy apartment. We'd move into a small house that spring. Friends who felt more like family than my real one ever did. That peace lasted until about a month ago when an envelope showed up in our mailbox with no return address. Inside was a card with a turkey on it and a message written by my mother. We're hosting Thanksgiving this year. It's been too long. The whole family will be there. We expect you both to come. Classic control move. No RSVP info, just a demand. I texted her anyway. No, we'd love to see you. No, hope you can make it. Just we expect you. It was classic them. Not an invitation, a demand. My first instinct was to throw it in the trash. But Emily looked at me and said, maybe we should go. Not for them, but for us. We shouldn't be afraid of seeing your family, she said. And maybe it's time to put this behind us. I wasn't convinced, but she had a point. We're planning to start a family soon, and part of me felt like I needed closure before becoming a father. If nothing else, I wanted to look my parents in the eye and make it clear that their behavior, and Ryan's, was no longer tolerated. So, against my better judgment, I sent a short text back to my mom saying we'd come. The moment I hit send, I regretted it. A week later, the first sign that this was a mistake showed up. Emily was folding laundry when her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It read, "Can't wait to see you again. I've missed your smile." No name, no context, but we both knew exactly who it was. Ryan. He hadn't changed. If anything, he was emboldened. Emily blocked the number without responding, but I sat there staring at the screen, my stomach tight. I wanted to believe this Thanksgiving could be different, that maybe they'd changed, or at least grown up a little. But deep down, I knew the truth. People like my parents don't change. Ryan certainly doesn't. If anything, I had a feeling this dinner was going to make everything worse. Still, we decided to go. Maybe it was stubbornness. Maybe I just wanted to face the problem head on, instead of letting it lurk in the background forever. I told Emily before bed that night, if anything happens, anything, we leave. No second chances. She nodded. We both knew we weren't just going home for Thanksgiving. We were stepping back into a place I'd spent most of my life trying to escape. The drive to my parents' place felt longer than usual. Emily stared out the window most of the time, and I could tell she was trying to stay calm. I was too. We hadn't been back there in almost 6 years, and it felt like we were driving into enemy territory. When we pulled up to the house, nothing had changed. Same over-decorated porch, same perfectly trimmed hedges, same big Carter family sign nailed above the front door like it was some kind of estate. My mom had always loved putting on a show for the neighbors, and that hadn't changed either. The second we stepped out of the car, the door opened and she came rushing out, arms wide like she was seeing her long-lost son. "Oh, Danny, look at you," she said, hugging me tight before stepping back to inspect me. "You look older, tired. I guess city life is harder on you than you thought." There it was, not even a minute in, and the first insult was already out. My dad came out behind her, shook my hand with the enthusiasm of someone picking up a piece of trash, then turned his attention to Emily. "You're even prettier than I remember," he said, a little too slowly, a little too close. "Ryan's been excited to see you." I pretended not to hear that last part. Inside, the house was loud and crowded. My mom had invited more people than I expected, cousins I hadn't seen in years, old neighbors, even some family friends I barely remembered. Everyone acted surprised to see me, like I'd just returned from war instead of living 2 states away. We hadn't even been there 10 minutes before Ryan showed up. He came down the stairs with that same smug grin I remembered, wearing a button-down shirt he probably thought made him look important. He walked straight past me and wrapped Emily in a hug that lasted way too long. "Wow," he said, still holding on to her. "I almost forgot how good you smell." Emily pulled back, forcing a small, polite smile. "Hi, Ryan. It's been a while." "It's been too long," he said, leaning closer than he needed to. "We've got a lot to catch up on." I stepped between them and clapped him on the shoulder harder than necessary. "Plenty of time for that later," I said. He smirked and walked away, but not before glancing back at Emily one more time. She shifted closer to me and whispered, "I already hate this." It only got worse during dinner. Every dish was served with some backhanded comment. "We weren't sure you'd come," she said at one point. "I mean, you're so busy with your important job." My dad added, "It's good you could make time for family. Most people would have made it a priority from the start." Ryan, of course, sat next to Emily. Every time she spoke, he laughed too hard. About halfway through the meal, my dad cleared his throat. "Listen, Daniel," he said, in that fake, calm voice he always used when he was about to say something ridiculous. "Your mother and I have been doing a lot for Ryan lately, helping him get back on his feet. He's starting an e-commerce automation business, turnkey Shopify stores run by a partner of his who handles the inventory and ads. But we're not getting any younger, and it's getting harder to do on our own." Here it was, the real reason we were invited. "I'm sure you could pitch in," he continued. "You're doing well, right? A few thousand to help your brother out. That's what family's for." I laughed because I didn't know how else to respond. "You're asking me to invest in Ryan's scams?" "Scams?" my mom repeated, offended. "It's a real opportunity. And after everything we've done for you, it's the least you could do." "Everything you've done for me?" I said. "You mean raising me? That's called being a parent." Ryan chimed in, his tone dripping with fake humility. "I don't need much, just a little seed money. Emily can probably talk you into it. She's always been the more reasonable one." That was the moment Emily put her napkin down and whispered to me, "I want to leave." I wanted to say yes. I wanted to walk out of that house and never look back. But I also knew that if we left now, this whole thing would never stop. They'd twist the story, make it seem like we were the problem, and nothing would change. "Not yet," I whispered back. "We're going to finish this." She sighed but nodded. We stayed through dessert, which was just more of the same. Insults wrapped in fake concern, creepy comments from Ryan, and my parents acting like I owed them everything. By the time we left the table, I was exhausted. Emily and I had barely slept. She said she kept waking up during the night, convinced she heard footsteps outside our room. I believed her. This house had always had a way of making people feel watched. When I came out into the hallway to grab coffee that morning, Ryan was already there, leaning against the wall like he'd been waiting for me. "Morning, big brother," he said, grinning. "Emily awake yet?" I was thinking we could go for a walk, just the two of us. You know, catch up. I didn't respond. I just stared until he eventually chuckled and walked off. During breakfast, his behavior got more obvious. Every time Emily moved, Ryan followed her with his eyes. If she stood up to grab something, he'd stand up too. At one point, he reached across the table and brushed her wrist as he passed her the butter. Totally unnecessary. Emily froze, then quietly pulled her hand back and looked at me. That look said everything. I'm not okay with this. I confronted my mom about it when Ryan left the room. "He's crossing lines," I said. "You need to tell him to stop." She didn't even look up from the dishes. "Oh, Daniel, don't make a big deal out of everything. Ryan's just affectionate. You know how lonely he's been." "Affectionate?" I repeated. "He's creeping out my wife." She sighed, annoyed. "Maybe Emily should try being a little nicer. He's your brother. It's not a crime to be friendly." That was their logic. Always excuse Ryan, always blame someone else. Later that afternoon, we went upstairs to change before dinner. When we got back to our room, there was an envelope on the bed. It wasn't there before. My stomach dropped as soon as I saw Emily's face after opening it. The letter inside was handwritten and messy, and it made my skin crawl. I think about you every day. I know you're not happy with him. We're meant to be together. I'll wait for you as long as it takes. Our Emily's hands were shaking when she handed it to me. He came in here, she whispered, while we were gone. I wanted to storm downstairs right then and there, but Emily stopped me. Not yet. Just keep this. We might need it. It was the smartest thing she could have said. I folded the letter and slipped it into my jacket pocket. If things kept going the way they were, that piece of paper might end up being evidence. That evening, Ryan showed up with someone new, a guy named Victor. He looked to be in his late 30s, shaved head, flashy watch, the kind of guy who thought expensive cologne made him respectable. He shook my hand like we were business partners and immediately started talking about opportunities. He handed me a card for a storefront LLC I didn't recognize. Months later, that same LLC name showed up in the charging documents. Ryan tells me you're doing well for yourself, Victor said. We're getting ready to launch something big. New investments, huge upside. A little help from family could make a big difference. I almost laughed. I'm not interested. Just think about it, he said, lowering his voice. It's not just about business. Helping family pays off in other ways. The way he said it felt like a threat, not a suggestion. After they left, Emily and I sat in silence for a long time. She looked exhausted, scared. I don't feel safe here, she admitted. He's not just being inappropriate anymore. He's getting bolder. I nodded. I know. And I'm done hoping this will blow over. That night, I made 2 calls. First, I spoke to a lawyer friend of mine from college and explained the situation. The messages, the letter, the harassment. He told me to document everything and save any physical evidence. If this escalates, you'll want a record of every incident, he said. Then I called Lena, an old friend who now worked as a detective. I hadn't talked to her in a while, but she didn't hesitate. Keep your phones on you, keep evidence safe, and don't confront him alone, she told me. If he crosses a legal line, I'll help you file a report. When I hung up, I felt a little more in control. Ryan was crossing a line, and if he pushed it any further, I wanted to make sure I was ready. Emily was quiet as we got ready for bed. She asked me if we could just leave, forget the whole thing. And a part of me wanted that too. But another part knew that if we walked away now, he'd never stop. My parents would keep defending him, and Ryan would take it as permission to push harder. Just a little longer, I told her. If he tries anything else, he won't get away with it this time. And the next time Ryan crossed a line, it wouldn't be something a letter or a phone call could fix. Thanksgiving morning felt tense before anything even started. The house was busier than I'd ever seen it. My mom was running around the kitchen barking orders. My dad was already in his host mode, shaking hands and bragging about Ryan's non-existent business. And Ryan was doing laps around Emily every chance he got. By the time we sat down for dinner, there were nearly 40 people packed into the dining room and living room. The table was covered with food, but I wasn't hungry. My mom stood up for her welcome speech, and instead of saying something nice, she turned it into a dig. I'm just so proud of my sons, she said, putting her hand on Ryan's shoulder. One of them has stayed close to the family and never forgotten his roots. The other one? Well, at least he made it today. Everyone laughed, even though it wasn't funny. My dad followed with his own comment, saying how Ryan was finally stepping into adulthood, while I ran off and became a stranger. Then the cousins started joining in, asking why we didn't visit more often and whether we were too good for family now. I didn't respond to any of it. Emily held my hand under the table, trying to calm me down. But Ryan wasn't going to let the night go by quietly. He was already a few steps past tipsy, slurring his words louder than usual, acting like he owned the room. So, he said suddenly, clinking his glass, I just want to say something. The room went silent. Ryan grinned like he was about to make a speech. I've always said Emily and I would have made a great couple, he said, turning toward us. I mean, come on, look at us. We're both into the same things. She probably would have been happier with me anyway. The table went quiet for a second. Then a few people chuckled. My mom laughed the loudest, as if it was some harmless joke. My dad added, well, there's still time. You never know how life turns out. Emily's face turned red. She mumbled something and stood up, saying she needed to use the bathroom. Ryan watched her walk away. I stared at him and said, don't. He just shrugged, pretending not to understand. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. I started to get a bad feeling. I stood up and started walking toward the hallway. ignoring the relatives who tried to stop me to chat. The house was quieter back there. I turned the corner and heard a muffled voice upstairs. It was Emily's. Then a louder sound. A scream. I ran up the stairs and followed the noise to the guest hallway. She'd gone toward the hall bathroom. He'd shoved her into the nearest guest room. The knob wouldn't turn. Locked. I kicked it open. Ryan was inside, cornering Emily against the wall. His hand was on her arm, and he was leaning in too close. She was pushing him away and yelling for him to stop. He turned around when the door slammed open, and I saw his face. That same twisted, smug look he always had when he thought he was in control. "Get away from her," I said. "Relax," he said, laughing. "We're just talking." I didn't wait. I grabbed him by the back of his shirt and yanked him away from her. He stumbled, tried to swing at me, missed, and crashed into the dresser. He pushed himself up and lunged forward, shoving me in the chest. That's when I swung back, a quick punch to his jaw that sent him back against the wall. Everything turned chaotic. Emily was crying and trying to pull me back, but Ryan came at me again, swinging wildly. We crashed into the nightstand, knocking over a lamp. I shoved him down hard, pinning him with my forearm across his chest. "If you ever touch her again," I said, "I'll make sure you regret it." We both froze when we heard my mom screaming from the hallway. She had come running after hearing the noise, and now she was yelling that I was attacking her poor son. My dad appeared too, shouting at me to let go of him. The next few minutes were a blur. Relatives crowded the hallway. Someone called the police. I later found out it was my dad. Ryan was pretending to be the victim, yelling that I snapped for no reason. Emily was trying to explain, but no one was listening. By the time the police arrived, the house was a mess. They separated all of us. One officer took my statement in the kitchen, another spoke to Emily upstairs, and two more were questioning Ryan in the living room. They photographed the broken latch and the overturned lamp, logged the guest room door as damaged, and bagged the handwritten letter as evidence. An officer had Emily export the texts and call logs to a case email on the spot, gave her a victim advocate card with the case number, and confirmed they had body cam of the initial statements. One officer pulled me aside in the kitchen and went through everything step by step. "Tell me exactly what happened," he said. I explained it from the beginning. Emily's scream, the door being locked, Ryan trying to force himself on her, me pulling him off and defending her. The officer nodded and kept writing. In the living room, Ryan was giving his own version. He was sitting on the couch with an ice pack on his jaw, crying and telling anyone who would listen that I snapped out of nowhere and attacked him unprovoked. "He hates me," he kept saying. "He's always hated me. I was just trying to talk to Emily, and he lost control." The officers didn't seem convinced. They'd already spoken to Emily, and she'd shown them the texts, the letter, and screenshots from months back when Ryan had messaged her things like, "I dream about you every night." She also told them about the incident at her workplace and the unwanted phone calls. It wasn't just one night. This had been building for years. Two of my cousins backed her story. They said Ryan had bragged an hour earlier. "I'm making a move tonight. She wants me. She just doesn't know it yet." A little after midnight, they put Ryan in handcuffs and read him his rights. My mom screamed at them to stop, calling it a misunderstanding. My dad shouted that Emily was lying to protect me. None of it mattered. The evidence spoke for itself. One of the officers came back to me and said, "You're free to go. Based on what we have, your actions fall under defense of another person. You won't be charged." I nodded, but I didn't feel relieved. Emily was sitting on the couch with a blanket over her shoulders, staring at the floor. She looked exhausted, like the whole thing had drained every ounce of energy she had. We left the house around 1 a.m. and drove straight home. Neither of us spoke during the ride. We were both too tired to process what had just happened. I hoped it was over. It wasn't. 3 days later, Ryan was released on bail. The first thing he did was change his story again. Now he was claiming Emily had been flirting with him all night and that I overreacted out of jealousy. My mom repeated that version of events to anyone who would listen. Within a week, on December 3rd, she posted a 900-word Facebook note claiming Emily invited Ryan upstairs and that I threatened to kill him, painting herself as the peacemaker. 2 days later, screenshots of Ryan's DMs from 2019 to 2023 and the police incident report started circulating in the same thread, and the comments flipped hard against her. Then the lawsuit came. My dad's lawyer sent a letter saying they were suing me for assault, emotional damages, and loss of family reputation. They were demanding $250,000 in damages. When I read it, I actually laughed. It wasn't just desperate. It was delusional. But I wasn't going to sit there and let them drag my name through the mud. I called my lawyer the same day and told him to file a countersuit for defamation, harassment, and emotional distress. We had more than enough evidence. Years of messages, the letter, witness statements, police reports. My lawyer was confident. If they want to take this to court, they're going to regret it, he said. Meanwhile, Victor decided to get involved. A week after the lawsuit, he showed up outside my office building leaning against his car like he was waiting for me. You don't want to do this, he said as I approached. You drop the charges, drop the lawsuit, and this goes away. Keep pushing, and things will get worse. I didn't answer. I just pulled out my phone and started recording. Are you threatening me? I asked. He looked past me and said, It's not a threat. It's advice. I sent the video straight to Lena. She forwarded it to the police, and they added it to the ongoing case file. From that point on, Victor was officially part of the investigation. By the end of that month, prosecutors filed charges of attempted sexual assault, called assault with intent in our state, felony stalking, harassment, unlawful contact, and violation of a protection order. The DA told us they were pursuing the case seriously because of the evidence and the ongoing pattern of behavior. My countersuit against my parents was moving forward, and Victor was now being watched for possible witness tampering. Through it all, Emily stayed strong. She met with detectives, gave statements, and prepared for court. But I could see how much it was wearing her down. We stopped going out much, kept our doors locked, and checked over our shoulders more often than we wanted to admit. It felt like our entire lives had turned into one long fight, not just against Ryan, but against the people who were supposed to love us most. And as much as I hated to admit it, I knew it was far from over. The deeper we pushed for accountability, the uglier this was going to get. I thought the worst was behind us after Ryan's arrest, but that was naive. The weeks that followed made Thanksgiving look like nothing. Everything started spiraling faster than I imagined, and every secret my family had ever tried to hide started crawling into the light. The first sign came less than 2 weeks after the first court date. We'd obtained a temporary restraining order at his arraignment, and for a while he seemed to obey it. Then one night, around 9:30, I got an alert from our porch camera. When I checked the feed, Ryan was standing on our doorstep, hands in his pockets, just staring at the door. I told Emily to stay inside and crack the door open. You're violating a court order. Leave now, I said. He smiled like it meant nothing and replied, I just want to talk to her. I slammed the door and called 911. Police arrived 20 minutes later and found him sitting in his car at the end of the driveway. They arrested him on the spot for violating the restraining order. The DA filed a motion to revoke his bail, and this time he didn't go home. That alone would have made things worse, but the civil case and investigation into his finances were uncovering far more. My lawyer called me one afternoon and said, We found something. Ryan and my dad had siphoned more than $300,000 from an inheritance account my grandmother had left for my mom. It was meant for her retirement, but they drained it on Ryan's fake businesses, debts, and shady payments tied to Victor's scams. The fallout was immediate. Once those records became public, my parents' reputation was shredded. Friends stopped answering their calls. People they'd known for decades deleted them online. Even their church distanced itself. Patricia couldn't handle the embarrassment. She started posting long, angry rants online, blaming me and Emily. She claimed Emily had led Ryan on, and that I'd brainwashed her. In one post, she said I'd abused Ryan growing up, and he was acting out trauma. At first, a few people believed her. Then screenshots of Ryan's messages, police records, and court documents started circulating. People saw the truth. The lies made her look desperate, and her credibility evaporated. Victor's situation blew up too. He was arrested by federal agents in an unrelated fraud case involving fake investment companies. Facing serious prison time, he agreed to cooperate. He handed over text messages, bank transfers, and emails linking Ryan directly to money laundering and other illegal activity. Subpoenaed bank records showed Ryan's business accounts pushing transfers to two shell LLCs Victor controlled within days of withdrawals from my grandmother's inheritance. Victor turned over texts where he told Ryan to split the deposits and route them through those entities before sending them back out, exactly the pattern agents described in the fraud case. That changed the tone of the criminal case completely. What started as an assault and harassment case now included potential financial crimes. Ryan was no longer just a creepy brother. He was part of an active investigation into fraud and laundering. My dad started panicking. He called my lawyer's office trying to negotiate, offering to drop the lawsuit against me if I dropped the countersuit and stopped cooperating with prosecutors. We ignored him. A week later, he left me a voicemail. You're destroying this family. You'll regret this. I deleted it without listening to the rest. The walls were closing in on them. Ryan's so-called friends turned on him. One of them testified that Ryan had bragged about getting rid of me and even hinted at plans to harass Emily again if he ever got out. People who once defended him vanished. The house I grew up in was vandalized twice with words like liars and criminals, spray painted across the garage door. By the time the preliminary hearings were done, the Carter family name was a joke. Everyone in town knew about the attempted assault, the restraining order, the inheritance theft, and the money laundering. My parents had spent decades building a public image of respectability. Now they were the cautionary tale everyone whispered about. Emily and I focused on staying safe. We changed our phone numbers, upgraded the house security, and stopped posting online. Lena stayed in touch with updates from the investigation. Every time we spoke, the same picture became clearer. They weren't just going to lose this fight. They were going to lose everything. It was no longer about one man's obsession or one family's dysfunction. This had become bigger, a complete collapse of a system they'd built on lies and favoritism. And for the first time, they were paying for every decision they'd ever made. The truth was out, the damage was irreversible, and all they could do now was watch everything they cared about fall apart piece by piece. And I didn't feel an ounce of guilt about it. They'd spent years breaking me down, making me believe I was the problem. But now, finally, reality had caught up to them, and there was no way out. The trials took almost a year to wrap up. It felt like living in slow motion. Court hearings, meetings with lawyers, witness prep, more hearings, and endless waiting. But when it was finally over, the outcome was better than I ever could have hoped for. Every single person who tried to destroy us paid for it. Ryan's criminal case was the first to conclude. The evidence was overwhelming. The texts, the letter, the testimony from Emily and the cousins, the restraining order violation, the porch camera footage. Victor's cooperation sealed the deal. The prosecution built a timeline that showed his behavior escalating over time and how he had deliberately ignored boundaries and legal orders. They even showed the court messages where he'd talked to a friend about convincing Emily to leave me, which made it clear this wasn't some misunderstanding. It was a plan. The jury didn't take long. After just 4 hours of deliberation, they found him guilty on all charges: attempted sexual assault, harassment, stalking, and violating a restraining order. On top of that, because of the money laundering involvement tied to Victor, he faced federal charges too. The judge sentenced him to 7 years in state prison, plus additional federal time to be served consecutively. He'll be in his 40s before he gets out. The day he was sentenced, he refused to look at me. He stared straight ahead as if none of this was his fault. But I didn't care. For the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of him. I wasn't angry either. He was finally exactly where he belonged. My dad's fate came a few months later. The investigation into the inheritance theft and financial fraud had turned into a separate case. The forged documents, bank transfers, and paper trail left no room for excuses. In court, his lawyers tried to argue that he was just trying to help his son, but the prosecution pointed out how much money he'd personally spent and how much he'd tried to hide. He was convicted of fraud, theft, and conspiracy to commit financial crimes. The judge didn't go easy on him. Harold got 3 years in prison, 5 years of supervised probation, and was ordered to pay back nearly everything he'd stolen. He lost his job, his savings, and most of the respect he'd once had. Patricia avoided prison, but she didn't escape consequences. She was charged with harassment and obstruction for trying to interfere with witnesses and for the online smear campaign. She accepted a plea deal: 2 years of probation, mandatory therapy, and 300 hours of community service. Part of her sentence included a ban on contacting either me or Emily in any way, directly or indirectly, for at least 5 years. Then came the civil suit. My lawyer built a strong case for defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, harassment, and related damages. A jury found clear and convincing evidence of malice in the smear campaign and online posts and awarded $4 million, including compensatory damages for emotional distress and reputational harm, plus punitive damages to deter future misconduct, with attorney's fees and costs as allowed by statute. The court entered judgment on the verdict. They couldn't pay it, so the family estate, the same house I grew up in, was seized and sold. We didn't celebrate. There wasn't any joy in it, just a long overdue conclusion. The sale proceeds fully satisfied the judgment after fees and costs, and once the court released the funds we paid off our mortgage, invested for the future, and set aside money for our child. We cleared it to keep the sale clean and bank the equity when we moved a few months later. About 6 months after everything ended, Emily gave birth to our son. We named him Luke. Holding him for the first time felt like the final chapter of a long, painful book. I'd spent my whole life trying to break free from the mess I was born into, and now here he was. A chance to start over and do everything right. We decided we didn't want our son growing up anywhere near the shadows of that family. So we packed up and moved to another city a few more hours away. New house, new neighborhood, new phone numbers. We cut off every possible line of contact. We even changed our emails and deleted the few distant relatives who still tried to reach out. Every now and then, we'd hear bits and pieces from mutual acquaintances. Ryan tried appealing his conviction. It was denied. Harold was struggling with health problems in prison. Patricia was living in a small apartment and had been asked to leave her church after her behavior became too erratic. I didn't feel bad for any of them. Not even for a second. The biggest surprise came when Patricia sent a handwritten letter to our old address. It was forwarded to us by accident. It was long, messy, and all over the place. Half apology, half blame. She said she was sorry for how things turned out, but that I had overreacted and destroyed the family. I didn't even finish reading it. I burned it in the fire pit in our backyard. I look at Luke now and think about how close we came to letting all that toxicity follow us forever. If we had stayed quiet, if we had just ignored what Ryan did, maybe they would still be part of our lives. But it wouldn't be a life worth living. It would be one where we're always watching our backs, where Emily never feels safe, and where my son grows up thinking this kind of behavior is normal. I don't regret a single thing we did. Taking them to court, pressing charges, cutting them off, it was all worth it. Every hearing, every sleepless night, every ugly moment. It taught me something I wish I'd learned a long time ago. Blood doesn't mean loyalty. Family isn't about DNA. It's about respect, love, and safety. And if people can't give you that, then they're not family. They're just strangers who share a last name. These days, life is peaceful. Emily goes on walks with Luke every morning. We have friends over for dinner without worrying about drama. Our home is quiet, safe, and ours. No unwanted calls, no uninvited visitors, no one trying to tear us apart. And that's all I ever wanted. A real family. One I chose, one I protect, and one I'll never let anyone try to hurt again. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way.
Did you enjoy my story? What a journey it has been. I truly wonder, what would you have done if you were in my shoes? Would you have chosen silence to keep the peace, or would you have done what I did to reclaim your dignity? Let's meet in the comments below. I'm so curious to hear your thoughts. I'm reading every single one. Which city are you listening from tonight? If my story resonated with you, you can support me and help me bring more stories like this to the world by sending a super thanks. Your sweet support means the world to me and allows me to continue this journey with all of you. On the screen now, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend you watch next. There are so many more on my channel, each with its own lessons and triumphs. Don't forget to subscribe and click the notification bell so you never miss a new chapter. Thank you for being here with me. Until the next story, with love and respect.